This is how it's going, and this is how it started. We're talking about West Amarillo Creek and landscape rehydration at Wildcat Bluff Nature Center on this edition of Sustain the Plains.
We're on upper West Amarillo Creek. So there's kind of two branches that meet at Wildcat Bluff, and we're on the west one. And I'm standing in the middle of the creek bottom, and we're looking at it a day after it rained a whole lot.
Will Masters founded a group called Ogallala Life, which built natural dams on West Amarillo Creek at Wildcat Bluff and elsewhere in the area, and the dams leak on purpose.
And so what we've done, we built now nearly 100 of these leaky dams. They're made out of wood and brush. We've called them like leaky weirs or natural infrastructure in dryland streams. And they're temporary. And so we're building them to slow the water down, spread it out, and sink it into the ground. And so this one is 2 years old, and it's caught about 6 kind of stormwater flow events to recharge the aquifer.
The aquifer he's talking about is the Ogallala Aquifer, the primary source of fresh water in the Texas Panhandle region, and it is a resource on the decline. Like a lot of streams around the Texas Panhandle, the creek doesn't see much water except when it rains. We visited after several days of rain in early May.
Before we started working, whenever it would rain, in a matter of hours, the water would flow through here and it would be gone because it flowed down uninterrupted. Now we have a whole lot of interruptions and it slows it down, and this last storm event, the water didn't even make it off the property. And so we got a lot of runoff from the west, and we soaked it all into the ground using this. So this was a degraded watershed, and it was a pretty good example. And so we had like a small incised channel, and the channel was bare. There wasn't vegetation in it.
When it did flow with stormwater, West Amarillo Creek would do so in a channel the water carved into the landscape over time, creating a chute that almost never spills over its banks.
The erosive force of the water is greater the more it's concentrated. Think of like a fireman's hose, you know? And if you spread it out, all of a sudden, it doesn't cut into the ground anymore. And that's the whole point. And then spread it out and then let it soak in. This thing does not impound water. We like retain water. What it does is it impounds silt and sediment. And so the runoff from upstream carries with it a whole lot of clay and sediments, and so that hits these structures. The water kind of runs into the water that's being held up, and some of the sediments drop out. And so we're retaining water by slowing it down. We're also retaining sediment and nutrients. And so over time, this is going to build up, and whenever the structures mature, you know, which might be in 5 years or it might be in 15, the channel will be at this height instead, and I'll be standing on a swamp, or I would be, but it'd be too wet. At least that's the hope.
Actually, way back when, the creek area used to be a wetland.
Historically, we had this belt of wetland corridor, and so whenever it would rain, the rain could like really spread out and it would just soak it all in.
And there's evidence the creek flowed, even if we weren't there to see it happen.
The runoff from upstream carries a lot of like clays, and it has kind of a distinguished color. And so sometimes we can see, well, like some of the grass here is red because it's been under the water. What we can also see is a high water mark. And so the water got up, you know, it's like a bathtub ring kind of level thing, and you can just, and so yesterday the water was, up to about right here. And it was deeper in places and shallower in places, but over time this channel here is filling up with muck and rebuilding, and that's kind of the whole point. And so what we expect to see is vegetation. And so next year or the year after that, it'd be like I'd be in thick grass, you know, and then hopefully a transition to wetland plants. And the height of the structure is designed that way. And so if we get enough water, it gets up to about here, it spreads out along the bank.
When we first met, Will described why landscape rehydration is his current obsession.
I grew up hunting and fishing, and my dad took me and my brothers and sisters kind of to a bunch of different farms and ranches, and we were just really privileged to see a lot of this landscape. I learned how to fish in a creek south of McLean. It's called Long Dry Sand Creek. But this stretch of creek that I fished in wasn't dry. It was like 6 feet deep in spots. It was awesome. And if you drive out there today, the creek is bone dry. And so, yeah, we've had this kind of privileged look at the drying out of our landscape. And so it just haunted me my whole life.
2 years ago, Will and a friend, Warren Thetford, gathered some volunteers and began building leaky dams on a ranch north of Amarillo along the Canadian River.
Our first project was on private rangeland north of Amarillo. And so it's just on the north side of the Canadian River. So this ranch has been in existence since 1910. And in 1910, there were 9 streams that had live water that always flowed. Today, there are no streams with live water.
Anybody that's been out here a long time knows a lot of places that they've seen firsthand that are a wreck of what they were 50 years ago. Springs that have gone dry, creeks that have gone dry, beautiful cottonwood groves that are all dead.
We can look at some like historic aerial images, and so there's some images of around the 1950s. You can see roughly what the watershed condition was like in the 1950s, and it is just dramatically different from today. It's like hard to believe. It's hard to comprehend. And I think that is like the problem is the degradation is so slow. It's like multi-generational. We don't know what we lost.
My whole career has been in analyzing vegetation throughout the West, primarily on rangeland. Will and I met sort of by chance in Amarillo a few years ago, and we came out here and we talked even back then. It's like, we can fix that right there now. You know, we can get out of the truck right now and go out there and fix that.
Ogallala Life crews built 120 dams on the ranch.
And that's the point, is create these little, like a distributed chain of wetlands that can soak up floodwater.
It's a cheap and easy way to do this. One thing that I do see hope in all this is that you can build these dams, and in 1 or 2 years, there's like new trees sprouting up. There's a big patch of sunflowers that wasn't there before, and you got a covey of quail hanging out there.
Instead of having like roughly kind of desert terrain on both sides and a gully, you have a riparian corridor with willow and cottonwood and tall grasses. On a local scale, I think that it is achievable and beneficial. The problem is, how do we scale it to a bioregional level? And that is why we need the public engaged.
If you're from the Texas Panhandle, did the Canadian River look like this or this when you were growing up? Have you noticed the effects of water decline in our region? Tell us in the comments below. And subscribe. Remember, we're all in this together.
At Panhandle PBS, our reliable news reporting and fact-based storytelling has always been free. We're proud to offer our work for free thanks to generous support of viewers like you. If you appreciate our journalism and would like to see it continue, please consider making a donation to Panhandle PBS today.